of adversity. Tonight, we're closing out the powerful series, Trauma Through the Lens of Gender, with none other than my brother Brandon R. Brown, a nationally recognized trauma specialist and healer who has spent over 25 years creating safe spaces for transformation. In our world that, let's be honest, feels heavy, with fear, uncertainty, and cycles that no longer serve us, this conversation is a timely reminder that healing is not just personal, it's a collective. It's time to go back to the basics and rebuild the environments that shape how we feel, think, and grow. So let's lean in, reflect, and experience trauma-informed approaches and intergenerational resilience can create an ecosystem where healing is not only possible, but it becomes sustainable. This is the flip side. So let's get into it. Trauma, toxic stress, broken habit, and hurting heart don't define destiny, but peace isn't passive. It requires an exchange. To create a flip and access peace in the middle of the pieces, you are challenged to make an exchange of the lies that have kept you mentally hostage in basement moments. Resilience isn't about bouncing back, but bouncing forward. Living Strong, the flip side of adversity, brings powerful stories and fearless conversations from experts in the field of business, relationships, emotional, physical, and mental health, and faith-based communities. Each episode creates a brave space with powerful tools from authentic connections. Tune in as we dig in with Dr. Jackson on the flip side of adversity. Hello, and welcome to episode 200. Yay! And the crowd goes wild. I would have no other person besides my good brother, although he drives me crazy, to share this moment with me. Welcome back for episode 3 of our 3-part series talking about trauma through the lens of gender and unpacking this conversation around the ecosystem of healing. In our last episode last week, towards the end, you dropped this nugget around the need for us to actually go back to the basics. And so I'd actually like to pick up where we left off, and you unpacking, like, what did you mean by that? And why do you think that's important for us to sustain this work?
All right, so let's pause for a second.
No.
No, because you said something that you just wish to walk through. Happy 200th. All right, because I don't think people know the drive, the determination, the desire that it takes not to create something, but to birth it. And then definitely people don't talk about what it talks to sustain it. Right. So you have many people that have fallen off by episode 12. Facts.
Facts. Whole facts.
So, so I would be remiss if you were not acknowledged for all of your work and your team to reach 200. So I just got to say that. So happy 200th birthday. I was going to do it like, like Stevie Wonder. Happy birthday to you.
All the
Anyway,
things. You know what? I really and truly appreciate it, because I know of the people that are on this journey of really doing authentic, real work. You
Uh,
have consistently always been one of those people that I can trust in this. And so I receive that um, it wholeheartedly because I know you get it. I know
mhm.
you understand what it takes to be committed because you want to do something well and authentic and sustainable.
I call you a dream believer as versus a dream catcher. You know, people like to sit there and like they think that they can catch the dream. Mm-mm. You got to believe it, and then you have to actualize it. And I
Yeah.
know you did not want to use this time, but if no time was given to your 200th, like this in and of itself could have just been an accolade to you,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I appreciate, for some mischievous, magnificent way, I get to share this time with you. So anyway, when you were talking about going back to the basics, I think so. I say this in a way like, do you remember when you were afraid to get in trouble on the block?
Yeah.
Like you weren't afraid to get in trouble in the neighborhood? Because remember, I said like now I think we live in blocks where like the neighbors don't even speak to each other,
Mm.
right? And I have oftentimes wondered if to give grace and credit to the generations previous.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so me and you are big on words. I'm not going to say that they managed their struggle, but the community helped them cope
Mm-hmm.
with the struggle,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, in that sense, like when we had community, I know where I lived. If I did something wrong, I had to get through at least three adults before I got to my parents.
Yeah. Yes.
You know, um, so when we talk about community, particularly, and the word that we kind of stuck with last time was the whole thing of an ecosystem,
Right.
right? And with an ecosystem, everything thrives off of each other.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can't have a weak link in an ecosystem because then you have no system.
Right.
Like everything has to feed off of each other. So you know me, I'm always sitting with thoughts, and like one of the questions that I had is I said, so what if healing, and sometimes I don't even know if healing is the right word,
Mm.
right? Where I would have to give props to Lakeside, our mutual friend, um, because I think we're always told that it's healing, right? But I'm wondering, and this I've always sat in this space to say like, well, you're hurting, but how do you want this? How do you really want this to end for you? Like, are you looking for healing? Are you looking for reconciliation? Are you looking for
Right.
repair?
Mm-hmm.
And people are like, you know what? I never really thought about that because every time they talk about being hurt, the only thing they talk about is being healed. But I'm like, well, what if you just want to restore, right? So I think that I feel that in with the community, they probably did a very good job of just keeping everyone together, keeping everyone sane with the laughter, with the connection and all that other stuff, right? So that's why I said I feel like they did coping. However, so now we have fragmented communities, right? Now we have disjointed neighborhoods to which people literally have to sit there and say like it's almost like in COVID. You know how like COVID gave people the opportunity to figure out if they really love their kids.
Or if they even really knew them. Like what like do you even actually know your kid and
Or do
understanding
you know
their
the person,
needs? Mm-hmm.
or do you know the person I do too? You're like,
Mm-hmm.
who are you?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I feel in that I feel like in that moment, right? It gave everybody the opportunity to just be like, I don't know anything anymore, or what I thought was true isn't. Now, one of the things that we know to be true in the trauma space is that when we don't talk about it out loud, we compartmentalize it.
Mm-hmm.
We think that it's our own struggle, right? But when people start to talk and then people say, you know what, I feel the same way, then there's this whole notion of validation,
Mm-hmm.
right? So if we were to go to the ecosystem and getting back to the basics, it would almost have to be this new way of thinking of things where people are comfortable enough in their vulnerability to express. what their challenges are.
Mm-hmm.
Like, let's
So,
just,
yeah,
like, it's like less, because I feel like when if we hold this stuff, there's nobody knows what's going on. Like,
yeah,
so the whole thing is if we're really trying to heal, and I feel that oftentimes you might be sitting next to a person who is having similar struggles and wants the same thing, but you don't make that connection because you got a closed mouth.
the power of, we have had so many guests who have gone through, clearly, name of the show, Flip Side of Adversity. So many guests who have gone through experiences, adversity, trauma, pain, hurt, and over again, the awareness that I had to be willing to share my story, to process
Hmm.
my story as the catalyst for how they created their next and moved through what they had gone through. Over and over again, you see and hear that pattern. And so
Hmm.
you even see and hear it on TikTok and social media and all the things. But is there an element now that we have gone through so much time? You mentioned the pandemic. We have gone through so much time with virtual experiences that people have lost something in that vulnerability, in that sharing of space, or even in what they're calling community, would you say?
I have found the social media space to be a den of lies.
This is
I
true.
find
on
I
some levels.
no, no, no. So I'm just going to speak my truth,
Mm-hmm.
right? I feel like so many people spend so much time trying to create the perfect mosaic.
Mm-hmm.
But if I know you, I'm like, how did you post that? But I was talking to you last night,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's like we want, we really want to make it look like everything is peaches and cream on our side. But we know, we're not in that space. And
Mm-hmm.
then the interesting part is other people buy into this, and then they get upset about what the fake world they've been looking at,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's like because people always want to compare, right? And I feel like a lot of a lot of the healing that needs to happen is really centered in a space of saying, you know what, I love myself irregardless of what other people are doing,
Absolutely.
right? I can't tell you how many parents that I hear that they're like, I'm so happy, I'm jealous of my friends' kids because their kids graduated from college, and I'm like, but you
You
still
don't know
should
the
love your,
struggle.
yeah, you. But I'm like, you're. Do you understand um, how dangerous to me those statements are?
Mm-hmm.
Like, because you're actually comparing yourself to the unknown.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because I really have, I've looked at and I read about social media, right? And I feel because you got to remember, social media was prior to. So I think the combination of social media and technology have created this disconnection,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, people are very good on the social media platforms, but when you put them in a room, they don't know what to say.
And the connection. But that's actually what I'm getting at. I feel like the elements of what you have already shared with us, one, really exploring, is healing actually what you are going after? And kind of dig into, is it actually reconciliation or is it healing that you want? And
Mhm.
are those actually stages that you need to go through to get to the highest version of yourself? But do you recognize that that's all a part of the journey, and that is okay. And then you also shared being willing to share the things that are being almost passed down in the family because it
Mhm.
is unspoken, and I'm picking up things that I don't even understand or have the original story to, but I've picked it up and I'm carrying it because no one is talking about what this thing is, which can then lead to your third element of, if I don't really understand the story of my family, do I then also become confused about my own story and how I'm viewing and valuing myself and all of the elements and facets of who I am, like actually valuing it, as opposed to looking for somebody else's story to be able to become envy or jealous of. Those are
Mhm.
like three elements that, in and of itself, they each could be an episode of their own. But when you think about going back to the basics, when you think about ecosystem, do you think there is a particular basic element of
Mhm.
this that is often overlooked, ignored,
I think I think people need their tribe. I think people need their
tried?
tribe.
Mm,
I think people need their squad, their road dogs, their ace, their ride or dies. Like, but what I'm referring to is I'm referring to the person that knows you
mm,
because you've shared with them. I'm talking about having those individuals in your life that vulnerability is a norm and not an exception.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
I'm like, that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking
mm-hmm.
about like we need to have, because I find it, I feel like perhaps in a previous life I was a sociologist because I'm always
Now,
curious.
you are living that. We just need
No,
a new term for it.
no, because it's like I'm always here's a statement that I've been hearing a lot over the last couple of years, and it really it's mind boggling to me. People will say something to me like, I have a best friend, but they don't know everything about me.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the purpose of the best friend? Like, do you feel that you have to have the best friend because that's what everybody is doing, or do you recognize that like your best friend is supposed to be almost like your sacred, um like your sacred oasis, like the person that you are supposed to talk to. They have the keys, they know where the skeletons are. So it's like, if we talked about the soda thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like we create our own pressure, right, by holding on to stuff. But then we have to understand that we also, like you and I, doctor, we are holding on from the pressure from our parents, our great grandparents, our great great
Mm-hmm.
grandparents. Because even though there was community, there was still silence.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we can argue why the silence was there, whether it was out of safety or protection or stuff like that. But when things aren't processed and they're passed through, it's like a very ugly game of whisper down the lane.
Yeah.
And
Truly.
what happens, the real reason why we do or what this was being done then gets into this warped um thing, and people are like, I don't even know why I do it.
100%. So what?
I like.
So this element of going back to the basics is first really having people explore who is your person
Mhm.
and the
And just
level
to be
of
clear,
vulnerability.
your person might not be your husband.
True.
Your person might not be your spouse.
So,
Your person, your person might be that person that you grew up with, that you knew. That person might be the person that you just had that special relationship when you came out of high school. That person might be the person that you just had some shared and beautiful experiences with in college or trade school or military or whatever. But the thing is that like best friends aren't sought after. They're created,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
right? They're created through interesting experiences, and sort of taking it from there. But I if you don't have somebody
mm-hmm,
that you talk to, right? Like I could not imagine if I had to spend my entire life without anybody that I could really, really talk to.
Mhm.
Like I mean, I recognize the pressure. I mean, never really talked about it, but I was like the single parent and all this other stuff, and I had
Mhm.
to things. But you know, it was just it was a challenge at one point in time, thinking that like, what would I do if I didn't have somebody to talk to,
Mhm.
right? So I think for the basics, again, it's like it's identifying your tribe. But I think the other thing is that you have to understand, um, like, what you're doing. Is it true to yourself, right? So I have a very, which I think is a funny story. So back in some time,
Whatever. We're on a show, a radio show.
like back in time, I used to wear a lot of gold.
Okay.
But if you think about it, at that point in time, like everybody was wearing gold. Remember, we used to call it
Everyone.
Chuck Gold. So, you had all the chains and all this other stuff and da 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 da. And I remember I was going out somewhere and I stood in the mirror and I was like, what is that? And I literally took off gold because in truth, I never thought I looked good in gold, but I was wearing it.
Mhm.
Here's where I'm going.
Mhm.
I was because that's what everybody was doing. But when I really looked at myself in the mirror, I was like, I really don't like what I see.
Mhm.
And Dr. J, literally, I took off the gold that day, and I haven't put it back on because I was like, it doesn't. It's not me.
Mhm.
Now, granted, I switched silver or white gold. Uh, well, because I think it sits better. I think it looks better on me.
Mhm.
You, and like I feel that it sits better on me. And I think oftentimes when you look at particularly our communities, we lack individualism in most instances because we all want to look alike.
Mhm.
We all want to dress alike. Like, we all want to talk alike. And, when someone wishes to step out and be their own, they're saying, it's like, so what do you want to do? It's the little things. Like, you have the little kings and queens in West Philly, South Philly, North Philly that want to go to college. But generationally, it's like we just celebrate high school graduation. And they're trying to talk about going to college, but it's like, what are you doing? Like, this isn't what we do.
Mhm.
Right. So I think and I hope what people have recognized is that this topic is so complex because you can't really talk about, trauma without talking about economics. You can't talk about economics without talking about poverty. Like there's so many factors that play into this. And I
Mhm.
think oftentimes we try to, and I think this is the other thing that we've done through technology and social media. We attempt to make things as simple as possible.
Mhm.
But you can't make healing possible. Like you can't simplify
You
healing.
can't simplify it. Mhm.
You simplify trauma, right? So it's like we see these words, and I hate when they become the buzzwords because then everybody wants to try to use them, and I'm like, well, all you're doing is you're bastardizing the word,
Mhm.
like you're using it for what it is. Like trauma can be an event, but for many of us, it's been a lifestyle.
Mhm. Or it's been a
I am.
prison.
But here's the
Right.
thing, though. If you were born in prison, you wouldn't know what sunshine looked like.
Absolutely. And going back to your original statement, in if I am born into a prison, if I'm born into a box, and there is more to me than the box, I don't have a point of reference
Mm.
of how to step out of that, how to be more than that, how to actually be the unique, authentic version of who I'm actually supposed to be because all I know is the box. I don't have a point of reference for anything else.
See, this is where we get it. We could get into that beautiful conversation about resilience, right?
Absolutely.
And I never want to seem so dark to say that you can't,
Mm-hmm.
because you can, as long as you want to. And some of us, either intrinsically or externally. We have forces that drive us to do better, right? So I always find that it's necessary that if we're going to talk about things, like we have to talk about resilience, we have to talk about hope. Our brains, whether it's the amygdala or the hippocampus or however you want to have this conversation, and we don't want to get too academic or the erudites, but you have to understand that there's a brain side to this as well. We're wired to the juicy, right? Like we're like there's a reason I believe wholeheartedly and probably supported by other readings and research. Like there's a reason why people like they don't like reality TV because it's going to get an Oscar, right? They like reality TV because it gives you the adrenaline.
Mm-hmm.
You get the natural release of those chemicals, and then you become addicted to it. You become addicted to the release. So, as you know, if you know what brings you that release, you go to it. You go back to it. So, I think that it's like we just have to be mindful of so much. And I have learned, like one of my struggles, because we always talk about, in your space, you always talk about the struggle. In my struggle, I had to recognize that though I am quote unquote a social person, I'm really to myself.
So,
Like,
yeah. So I too will often tell people that by nature, I am a person who is very comfortable in being quiet, being by myself, not needing to I could go to a party and actually sit somewhere and watch everything that happens. And people are like, but you're always talking, you're always in front of, but by nature, I feel comfortable with me so I can be quiet and still and watch and observe sociologists and really take in the space without having to be or a part of the noise in the space. Uh,
hmm
but I also think going back to a couple clicks back to what you were talking about, that conversation of resilience, I think we also have to remind people of how courageous they are when they
hmm
are willing to live out purpose and even pursuing, asking a different question of themselves to explore what is it that brings you joy? What is it that wakes you up? What is it that you actually want to do and begin to pursue that you may not have all of the pieces for, but you're willing to be courageous enough to step out and say it and then begin to pursue it.
because I believe that people do recognize the power of silence. Because if I never tell you about it, nobody can hold me accountable to it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I think in the African culture they call it nomo, the power of the word. Right. But the thing is, with that, it has to be something that's expressed. So I feel like so many of us have like we've gotten, and this will probably even go. We're going to go back a couple decades, right? And for me, this is all connected because we've gotten into this thing about the fear of failure,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, but for me, this is the way that I kind of make all the links. If I never talk about it, you never know that I was afraid that I would never get it done. But I'm like, I need you. Like, if you want things to be different for yourself, you have to hold people, like, you have to tell people so somebody can hold you accountable. And that's the other part about the tribe
You know, I
or
was
your squad,
I was thinking the same thing. Yes.
right? And if people don't understand it, and I'm not getting any kickback from the book, but there's a beautiful book called The Pack. I don't know if you do you remember that book?
Mm-hmm.
So The Pack is about the four kids
The
out of
boy.
I think
Mm-hmm.
they're out of Newark.
The
Like if
the
people
four
don't,
boys.
yeah, that are now four doctors, but
Mm-hmm.
if they don't understand the importance of like when people hear another person's dream. Like if I tell you something, like if me and you are in that space and I tell you something, I believe that you are the person that's supposed to hold me accountable to it.
But I also think that's why the word tribe is so important here, because in distinction from the person that you may open up to and share all of yourself to, that person may not also be the person who you
In
share
your
your
tribe.
dream with. So a
Right.
tribe meaning that you have a collective of human beings who play different roles, but play roles to help you unmask and move forward, move towards the highest version of yourself, hold you accountable, continue to allow you to be vulnerable, needing an actual tribe. So that person you have been honest with, but also that person you can trust with holding and sharing your dream with, and they will also hold you accountable to moving forward and not just sitting on it.
Absolutely. So you might get a kick out of this. So while I was at Temple as an undergrad, my tribe were um, several individuals that were studying for their PhDs. I have no idea how this happened. It was like the chair of one of the departments, about five PhD students, and myself. And we would have dinner. Now, back then it was a feast, but right now I recognize it's a poor man's dinner, which I would take in a minute, right? But what I didn't really understand back then is what they were doing during dinner is that they were kind of like almost preparing for their dissertations, right?
Mm.
But for me, they were like, well, no, you're at the table. So you have to be prepared, right? So people are always like, so like, why are you always so? And I'm like, well, I whether it was my athletic background, my academic background, I come from a space where iron sharpens iron,
Mhm.
right? But it's done in a compassionate way because it's not about competition. It's about we're all going to eat or we're all going to succeed, right? But again, the fear of failure, the disjoining, technology, social media. I'm really geeked up about this whole thing that they're saying that kids should not get on social media until they're 16.
Mm.
I don't, I don't, I don't know if you've heard. They've started this conversation before, but for me, I appreciate that. But without proper parental supervision, it doesn't really matter because most parents don't. Some parents, I shouldn't say most, some parents aren't really paying attention to what their kids are doing on social media until you get somebody like me to tell them. But
But when you go into this conversation around ecosystem and tribe and the layers of tribe, I also just heard you talk about recognizing that also elements or members of your tribe need to be ones who are going to challenge you when you're at the table. So
mhm,
there may be those who you are vulnerable with, there may be those that you share your dream with and they hold you accountable, but also recognizing tribe members need to also be the ones who will challenge you as you are sitting at the table or you're walking in the room. They are continuing to have you pursue higher, deeper, more evolved conversations, ideas, innovations as you are continuing to move forward. I think this ecosystem, yes, we are all connected, but
mhm,
not connected to stay stagnant, connected
right.
to evolve and grow and thrive.
So I think if we were to just kind of bring this in for a second, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we had to build out the ecosystem. The
Okay.
ecosystem starts with you. It starts with you. And it starts with you understanding who you are. How do you love yourself? How do you give yourself grace? How do you give yourself mercy? How do you give yourself credit? Right? The other piece to this is like, do you have your people that you can talk to? Where is your release?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So if we had to have fun, I'm like, when are you belching? Right? If we had to go back to part one, it's like, when are you belching, right? Like, who is in your space that you can talk to in a very like, I keep using the word authentic, but I don't think it can be used more than enough, right? So you have your person, but then who are your people, right? And then the interesting thing is that I think that it's not that we're saying that your people are homogeneous,
Right.
right? I do not believe that anything happens in a homogeneous society. If you
Mm-mm.
want to do, got to be a heterogeneous society. Like, you have to have people that are
I
coming in
agree.
from all walks, all perspectives, positions, opinions, and things of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I also think what happens, I think some people, I want to be real careful how to talk about this. But I think some people wait for their turn to sort of be the big person, and they don't want to move from that place, right? So you literally think you're a big person, but in truth, the space that you're talking about is smaller than the dollar fish bowls that you get
Mm-hmm.
at the car,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, everybody thinks, but the whole thing is like, I'm like, oh, you think you're big, but you're not even looking at the other pieces, right? So when we're talking about how is this supposed to end for you, we can definitely get into the conversations of whether it's restore or reconciliation or repair. Like, that's a conversation in and of itself. But again, I think you have to expand it past healing, right?
So, what is
Because it's
beyond healing?
well, but for me, because you said that it was steps, and I feel that it's all like you choose which route you want to go. I sit in a space where, like, it's an array, right? It's not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily, not like you go from restore to repair to reconcile to heal. I sit in a space that, if you really sit with it and you figure out, how do you want this to end? So remember, I was last time we were talking about, like, what happens if you don't get the apology from the person that you want the apology
Mm-hmm.
from, right? So if that person is looking for healing, I don't know if it's going to happen through healing, right? But if it for me, it might happen through a repair,
You know
right?
what?
Just a repair of who I am, to recognize that I'm not going to get this, so that I can move on.
But I also feel like that's a part of healing, right? So, it going back to our last conversation, which, as you're talking, I'm curious around, is it not all under the umbrella of healing? So it's not, it isn't a row, but it's different. It's what healing is for you. For me, in that season, that version of Veirdre at that time, healing was forgiving, recognizing that it would never be a reconciliation.
Okay.
And I needed that to happen, because in that season, that's what that version of Veirdre needed for healing, to move to and to continue to move forward. But this version of Veirdre, healing looks different. Like,
Hmm.
because I've learned that lesson. That lesson is truly integrated into who I am. So, as I'm now pursuing a, this continuous evolution of who I'm going to grow into, how I'm going to continue to evolve, how I'm going to continue to rise, how I'm going to continue to create impact, healing continues to change based on how I am changing.
And I think the beautiful part about all of this, right? I think if we had to just step back for just a quick second,
Mm-hmm.
as we talked about in our first part, when I just simply said that, trauma is a subjective experience, right? I also think that we can say that healing is a subjective
Yes.
experience,
Yes. Agreed.
because I agree with what you said, but I will always couch that and say that I also believe that multiple truths can coexist in the same space. So I don't think either one of us is saying anything that's wrong. I just think that I'm sitting in a space where I think that healing is an option, where
Mm-hmm.
like I just want to restore. I just want to repair. I just want to reconcile, because I think we always talk about healing, but the weird part about healing is like healing is also this huge amorphous thing,
But
right?
you know what? I lean in because is I'm actually a common relationship again. I'm remembering conversations with Diane where she would lean in and talk about how healing isn't a destination. It's not
Hmm.
like a place that you are landing.
Mm-mm.
So it doesn't have one version or one thing like I'm landing at this place and now I'm healed. It is subjective.
Yeah, but I think again, if we're using words, if individuals are using words but not really understanding the
That
definitions,
part.
right?
Yeah.
So, like it's very interesting. Like sometimes when people don't know who I am and then they try to talk to me, and I'm like, where did you get that from?
Yes.
Like, I'm like, before I respond, I need to understand. Like, can you give me like a citation or whatever? Like, where did this come from before I respond?
Mm-hmm.
And then, oh, I'm like, okay, so let's just have this. But I think that um, I love words.
Yes.
I do, and I don't think I think more of us should learn how to appreciate words.
Mm-hmm.
Not about the first definition that pops up when you Google it, right? But literally understanding
Mm-hmm.
the art of the word, um, or word crafting.
Mm-hmm.
Your producer um, gave some shout outs when I was trying to apologize for any angst that I may have caused you earlier. But I think, but in that moment, it's just if you don't practice using words, you are forever lost in trying to express yourself. You know, and I know that most times people like they look at cussing, and I'm like, well, for me, cussing is just, well, I give value to cussing because for me, cussing is a learned, right? So if grandma, mom cuss, then yeah, I'm gonna cuss. But oftentimes with those individuals, I'm like, so what are you trying to
Right.
say?
Right. Right.
What
Could say
say?
yes.
So I might get in trouble for using this example because this is something that literally just happened yesterday. So two individuals got into somewhat of a squabble, and they're very good friends. And the one person comes to me and is like, "This person keeps cussing at me." Da 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 da. And I was like, I hear you, but I said, I'm just curious. If you took the cuss words out, what are they really trying to say? They didn't want to hear it at that point in time. But I was like, no, 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 seriously, like, let's just sit with this for a second. If you took the cuss words out, what are they trying to say? Oh, they're upset and all this other stuff. And I said, well, can we receive that and not because we do get offended by words.
Mm-hmm.
Can we get rid of that offensiveness and try to get where the hurt is coming from? And can we address the hurt without being offended? So they appreciated the thing, and we're still working on it to this point in time. Because if no one has ever had that conversation, like you're not going to solve anything by cursing,
Mm-hmm.
right? Just like you're not going to solve anything by being quiet. Just like you're not going to solve anything by trying to portray this mosaic on social media that your life is perfect. Like I feel like we do all of these things because we're addicted, or we have a great appreciation for how others perceive us. But I'm like, irregardless of how people perceive you, the person that really should count is how you perceive yourself.
It
Are you
keeps bringing
comfortable?
us back. Yep.
It's going to it's going to
It
it's going to
keeps
keep
bringing
bringing.
us.
It
Yeah.
keeps like, and again, that's where the ecosystem starts. Like
And
that's where the
the
ecosystem,
and
and
the
then but then it gets
ability, yeah.
because then the ecosystem can grow, right? Because then we can get into educational systems and we can get in like because the thing is that if you want to move, then you need to be put in spaces that will allow you to move, right? Whether it's church or school or however you choose. But it's like the seed will never grow if it's never planted. It won't. It will not show its potential. Like we just can't take a seed and put it on the table and wait for it to grow.
Mm-hmm.
Just like get to 200. Like you didn't start on one, you didn't start on the idea and say that you were going to get to 200. You were like, Lord Jesus, if I could just get to 10.
Right. A whole truth. A whole truth.
Can I?
If I could just get through episode 1.
But
But
the thing is,
so but
but we fall in love with these bigger things,
but you know
right?
what? But there's an element there to your seed part. I had a tribe of women that day that I spoke the idea of wanting to have a podcast. And I said out loud, I have no idea of how to do it. I don't know anyone who does know how to do it. I don't even know what it's going to take or even how I would start. But can I say out loud in this circle that that is what I want? And every single woman sitting in that circle received, heard, and began to identify where can we provide
Hmm.
soil for this seed that she's given us. And
Absolutely.
and that space and literally speaking it out loud for someone who is holding on to speaking out loud. I'm talking to you right now. I spoke it out loud, and no lie, less than a month later, someone who I never knew, saw, whatever, sought me out to be the answer for what I allowed myself to say out loud, and
Yeah.
started the trajectory of all of this.
Yeah. And you know, like for me, you say it as like it's a surprise, but I say it as almost it's an expectation. And I feel like oftentimes what people do is they're afraid to speak, right? Or they've convinced themselves that what they have is what they want. I,
And they will settle.
I can't tell you how many lawyers that I know that don't like law, right?
I've heard
Like
that
you
often.
so like if we had to go on a tangent, I tell people like fall in love with your passion, not necessarily a perception.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't think, and and I want people to truly understand that all of this is still connected, like deeply connected to the trauma and healing conversation because healing is not an external thing.
Mm-hmm.
If we were to stay in space, it's not an external thing. It's an internal thing, right? It's you trying to figure out like how do you bring this to closure. And this is the example that I always give because you've always had that person as you were growing up that hurt you,
Mm-hmm.
right? That you let get away, right? But it's always interesting when people are like, "Oh, I'm over that person." But if they get some semantic memory, like if they smell something or if they hear something, it takes it back and they're captured. And I always tell people, I'm like, so if you're really healed over something, it doesn't have power and dominion over you anymore.
Right.
If anything, something that used to hold you barely whispers in your ear. So I said, you're not past that person. So can you stop lying and say that you are? Like I feel like that is like one of those real tangible experiences that we say, like, I think people think that because they feel that they've forgotten something, that it's no longer there. But to quote that beautiful book from Veirdre called the body always keeps the score," which
Mm-hmm.
has recently beautiful attack, mind you. I don't know if you're aware of that.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, I'll send you the article.
Nice.
Um, but the thing is that you might not remember something, but the body does.
Yeah.
When you
So,
smell that, when you smell that smell, when you smell that perfume, when you smell that cologne, when you heard that song, like, and all of a sudden you were just in this, like, in this space. To me, that's just that could be an indication that you still have more healing to do.
so if we, as we wrap up, it's already 5:51. As
I
you
swear you speed up time when we're here.
No, I do not. I'm telling you, I promise. Well, that's why we said it was going to take 3 episodes for us to explore, and we still have only scratched the surface. As we come
You
to the
have that
close, huh?
you have that have that magical watch that Hermione had in Harry Potter when she could
I
just
am
fast forward
not.
time.
I am not accelerating time. It coming to the close of our 3-part series. In your last closing comments, what do you hope people are walking away with from this conversation?
I hope they understand that the journey for self-reflection is a dirty one.
Hmm.
Um, like if we were to sort of to give a visualization going back to the seed, you have to get your hands in the dirt. Like, you are not putting on your red bottoms and a nice black dress to plant a seed. Like, you have to be prepared to do this work, right? I'm not going to put on my fresh dunks and my brand new fitted lid to go into the garden. But if I got to get this, I got to be ready for it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think people need to understand that, if the goal is to love you, you have to love yourself unconditionally. If the goal is to love you, your love should not be attached to things, right? It shouldn't be attached to what you wear or, like, like it. You need to love you, right? Stretch marks and all, dad bod and all, right? Because I feel like if you can't love yourself, that's part of why you can't move forward. And I re- and if I had to say, like, it's messy, it's dirty, but if for those of you that truly understand planting, you can take that spot that looked like nothing was going to happen to it and turn it into something beautiful that's flourishing and sustaining. But you got to put that work in.
Gotta put the work
Like,
in.
that's the only thing that I would tell people. Like you have to get that work in. Like, if people thought that just from 3 1-hour conversations between you and I, that that, like, they were going to have, like, these epiphanies. You know what I truly hope happened? I really hope that most people that were really trying to figure out what we've been talking about, I hope they've gotten more confused, because then that means that they are more vested in this, and they realize that it's not pretty.
Mm.
And when we're talking about how we're going to get through this, it's not going to be pretty. Period. There's so many things that are connected into these two words, trauma and healing, most of which we haven't even touched,
Mm-hmm.
right? But everybody wants to use them. But my thing is, so here's my last little bit of homework. I challenge people to define what trauma means to them, and if they're really trying to find healing, I challenge them to define what healing means for them.
Mm-hmm.
That's the first part of the assignment. The second part of the assignment is that they share that with their person. The third part of that is that they identify their tribe with, hopefully, individuals that are willing to have the same conversations So what I'm pushing people to, or what I'm challenging people to do, create your own ecosystem.
And there you have it. I I I love it. I'm on the same page with you. And there's actually a group of women that I specifically connected to this episode because I want to be able to share the closing opportunity for others to be able to connect with a space where women come together to be able to get to a place of wellness. It was a space in which, when I was literally moved from a place that I thought was broken and disastrous and started Living Strong Consulting, it was two weeks into the launch of my business that I sat in this space with these women, and the whole focus of the Women of Wellness has been being able to pursue, not only in our faith, but in very practical, lived ways. What does it mean to be well? So as we close out episode 200, I want to just share. I'm blown away at again, also, not only thank you to you, Brandon, for sharing this moment with me, but thank you to all of the listeners who have continued to rock this roller coaster ride with me to 100 episodes in. I thank you. I thank you. I thank you. And continue to stay connected as even this show evolves and changes and grows. And I think when I have been able to find space with people that I can call my tribe, people that I can identify and show up messy, but also recognize that they're going to sit with me and allow me to cry, to share, because the most significant part of this is that the leader of the group desires women to be well. And so I have a short video for our listeners to check out and connect with. If you want a space as a woman to pursue a tribe, connection, relationship, but ultimately wellness, check out Women of Wellness and check out this video.
Heard the news about the Women of Wellness, especially the WOW conference that takes place September the 10th to the 13th, 2026. So many people have been asking, what is WOW and why WOW? So glad you asked.
Because the God we serve did not die, get buried, snatch death out of the hand of the enemy, rise up with full power in his hand for you to live broken.
Because life is just so stressful and we have so many responsibilities and roles as women. So to be here is just really encouraging to remind us that we're here for a purpose and to keep striving to get it done.
WOW has been a lifeline for me. When I first came to WOW, I came kicking and screaming. I didn't think that I was worthy of anything. And I came through the door and God met me at the door.
No, you're fine.
Okay. Because that's what this is.
Women of Wellness sisters, why WOW? Because you are not alone. God sees you, and so do we. Join your community of sisters who are building a sisterhood community. September the 10th to the 13th, 2026, Crown Plaza Hotel, King of Prussia, PA. Let's get in position. Change is required. We can't get better unless we know better. Don't miss registration. Go to the website wowwomenofwellness.com. And remember, we may not have it all together, but together, my sisters, we will have it all.
I tell you, episode 200, it has been one that has allowed me to share space with my good brother, Brandon, as he brings truth and he brings lived experience. He brings expertise. He brings over 20 years of experience. But most importantly, he continued a 3-part conversation in which he hoped to be able to bring space for you to start asking questions, for you to begin to explore, what does healing mean to you? And how can you begin to unpack the possibility that there is more from right where you are? And that's really what the flip side of adversity has been about. 200 episodes in, we try every single week to just provide you with another opportunity to ask a different question, to explore what could my flip look like on the other side of adversity. So as I shared earlier, I thank you. I thank you for every time that you have clicked, you've shared, you've commented, or you just showed up because you just wanted to listen. I thank you. And let's keep rocking it out, creating a flip together, pursuing this really complex word of healing, but let's do it together. Let's identify how we can authentically be who we are created to be and stay connected. Healing takes place in the context of healthy relationships over time. I pay homage to my mentor, Diane Wagenhaus, and I say, let's stay together. Same time, same place next week, right here on the flip side. I'll see you then.